heart-shaped teal tattoo, a bonus podcast episode written and narrated by Robert Fairhead from the Tall and True Writers website. In November 2024, I met with the volunteer coordinator for my local MP, Allegra Spender, who asked if I'd help with the 2025 federal election campaign. I'd campaigned for Allegra in 2022 and assisted her with post-election events, so of course I said yes. But I didn't expect that 6 months later I'd end up with a heart-shaped teal tattoo. My first experience of election campaigning was the 2018 by-election for the blue ribbon Liberal seat of Wentworth in Sydney's eastern suburbs. I was in my mid-50s, disillusioned with both sides of politics and keen for someone other than a male Conservative to win the seat and be my career politician MP. I'd seen the high-profile independent candidate, Dr. Kerryn Phelps, on TV and read her articles, flyers and social media posts. While I planned to vote for Kerryn, after hearing her speak at a Politics in the Pub event, I decided I'd do more. I joined her Purple team and spent 1 week handing out how-to-vote flyers at pre-polling and election day booths. Kerryn won the by-election in 2018, and I rejoined her Purple team for the 2019 federal election, volunteering for 3 weeks at pre-polling and election day booths. Unfortunately, Kerryn lost to the male Conservative candidate, Dave Sharma, in an election where voters confounded pollsters, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison's Liberals won a miracle third term of government. After 2019, the so-called moderate Sharma proved to be a true-to-form career politician in his safe seat, and Morrison's cloth-eared Liberal government lurched further to the right. I was disillusioned with politics again, but then I learned Allegra Spender was running as a centralist Teal independent for Wentworth in the 2022 federal election. As with Kerryn, I intended voting for Allegra, but after seeing her at another Politics in the Pub event, I felt I needed to do more. I signed up to be one of Allegra's Teal volunteers and spent the next 6 weeks waving corflutes, handing out policy flyers, and eventually how-to-vote flyers as a pre-polling and election day booth captain. None of us knew whether Allegra had won or lost when the polls closed on Election Day 2022. But later, at the after-poll party, I shed tears of joy with my fellow volunteers when TV election analysts predicted Allegra had won Wentworth. Her victory was part of an Australia-wide swing against the Conservatives to the Teal Independents, Greens and the new Labor government. In addition to Allegra's victory and the change of government, another positive result from the 2022 election was a promise by the Prime Minister-elect Anthony Albanese to fully implement requests made by Indigenous Australians in the 2017 Uluru Statement from the Heart petition. The requests included a constitutionally recognised and protected Indigenous voice to Parliament and a Makarrata Commission to oversee truth-telling in a process summarised by Indigenous advocates as Voice, Treaty, Truth. However, changes to the Australian Constitution require a referendum. A conversation with Allegra, while helping at one of her pop-up offices, inspired me to join Wentworth for the Voice, a volunteer group convened by Allegra campaigning for a yes vote at the referendum. So began 6 months of handing out flyers, door-knocking and workshops. I also accepted a neighbourhood leadership role to coordinate activities and was once again a booth captain for pre-polling and referendum day. Our group and other Vote Yes campaigners were hopeful at the start. But the right-wing Vote No opposition was divisive and full of misinformation and lies. And in the last weeks leading up to the referendum, after long days at pre-polling booths, I alternated between feeling confident of the yes vote and fearing the prospect of failure. Ultimately, the majority of Australians did not support an Indigenous voice to Parliament. I was ashamed of my country, but proud of my fellow Wentworth voters who'd overwhelmingly voted yes. And despite feeling flat and sad about the referendum loss for many months afterwards, I was grateful for the conversation with Allegra that spurred me to join the campaign. Well before Allegra's volunteer coordinator spoke with me in November 2024, I knew I'd be involved in her election campaign. Having been part of Kerryn's Purple team in 2018 and 2019, spent 6 weeks in Teal for Allegra in 2022, and 6 months of campaigning for the Voice to Parliament in 2023, I couldn't be a bystander in 2025, and I wanted Allegra re-elected as my independent MP. So I agreed to be an activity coordinator for my suburb and surrounding areas. This involved scheduling events and recruiting volunteers for handing out flyers and door knocking. We also organised street cleanups, dog walks and other high visibility social gatherings, wearing our teal-coloured t-shirts and caps. And a fellow volunteer led a team putting posters on poles up as high as possible so persons unknown couldn't remove or deface them. During the campaign, Conservatives weaponised the rise of anti-Semitism in Australia. There were false claims in the streets and at polling booths by right-wing groups and some voters that Allegra and her supporters were anti-Semitic because she had requested the resumption of humanitarian aid to Palestinians in war-torn Gaza. The accusations were ugly and divided the community. But there were also many uplifting moments. One evening, handing out flyers with Allegra at a shopping centre, a middle-aged man of Middle Eastern appearance approached us and shook her hand to thank Allegra for representations she had made on behalf of refugees. Seeing him express his gratitude filled me with energising pride. The last fortnight at the pre-polling booth was a blur of early mornings, long days and sleep-interrupted nights, tossing and turning, anticipating the alarm. Thankfully, my co-captain managed the roster for us, and I focused on setting up and packing away the booth and handing out how to vote flyers. There was a similar division of labour at the election day booth. My co-captain organised the roster and, after putting the finishing touches on our booth, my job was to stand at the entrance and ensure I was the last voice voters heard. Keep Wentworth independent. Vote Allegra. Unlike 2022, I sensed Allegra had done well at my election day booth when the polls closed, but the voter vibe hadn't been as positive at the pre-polling booth, especially during the first week, and I had no insight how she'd fared at other booths, let alone whether the Liberals had toppled Albanese's one-term Labor government. However, election results began appearing on the big screens at the after-poll party sooner than we'd expected. Labor had won a stunning victory. Australians had rejected the Trumpian politics and policies of the Liberals, and cheers rang out in the room when news broke that the divisive leader of the Liberals, Peter Dutton, had also lost his seat. But what about Allegra in Wentworth? How long would the vote count take? Would the result be called this evening? We had our answer when Allegra entered the room, to the cheers and hugs of supporters and the beat of Coldplay's A Sky Full of Stars. Streaming the song in my head while writing these lines and thinking back to that ecstatic election night still triggers tears of joy, just like 2022. A young volunteer brought a teal-coloured face painting pen to the after-poll party and was in great demand, drawing teal hearts on faces. Because of my beard, she drew mine on the back of my hand. After 6 months of campaigning for Allegra, pushing through the long days and sleepless nights, surviving the ugly moments and savouring the proud ones with fellow volunteers, I didn't want to lose the election night magic or my teal heart. So the next day, I walked to the local shopping mall, listening to A Sky Full of Stars on repeat, and got myself a permanent reminder of the 2025 election, a heart-shaped teal tattoo. Epilogue. Election Day 2025 fell on the same weekend as the Australian Writers' Centre's Furious Fiction 500-word short story writing challenge for May. I didn't have the time or creative headspace to write a story, but one of the election-inspired prompts for May was that our story must include a vote for something or someone. It was too tempting. I gave myself a week to recover from Allegra's campaign and then wrote an independent candidate. You can find this short story and a photo of my heart-shaped teal tattoo, my one and only tattoo, on the Tall and True writers' website, tallandtrue.com. Hi, I'm Robert Fairhead from Tall and True Short Reads and the Tall and True writers' website. Season 5 of Tall and True Short Reads features a series of interconnected short stories written specifically for the podcast, titled The 9 Lives of Leo Roberts. As I revealed in the recently released second episode, the reason for the long delay between the first and second episodes, Prologue the Clinic and 1 Rock Fishing, was partly because of my involvement in the successful election campaign for my local Teal Independent MP, Allegra Spender, from January to May 2025. I'm currently writing the third episode of The 9 Lives of Leo Roberts, 2, a fast car. In the meantime, I thought podcast listeners would enjoy this bonus episode from a Tall and True blog post where I recount the history of my political campaigning, including the 2025 election and how I ended up with a heart-shaped teal tattoo. You can read a heart-shaped teal tattoo and my other posts and a selection of my short stories and other writings at tallandtrue.com. You can also buy my short story and microfiction collections, including my latest, One Day in the Life of Alex's AI and Other Speculative Fiction, from the Amazon Kindle, Apple Books and Kobo online bookstores. There are links in the show notes. The next instalment of The 9 Lives of Leo Roberts will be released shortly. While you're waiting, why not check the podcast feed or the website tallandtrueshortreads.com for over 100 episodes from the past 4 seasons. Please follow or subscribe to Tall and True Short Reads and rate and review it on your favourite podcasting app. Doing so helps share my storytelling with other listeners. You can support the podcast and my Season 5 short stories by making a small one-off or regular donation through the Acast supporter page. Once again, there is a link in the show notes. Finally, please share this episode with family and friends and spread the word about Tall and True Short Reads and the Tall and True Writers website.